Hello everybody, this is University of Miami College of Engineering. This is Department of Biomedical Engineering, and we're going to be doing a lab video tutorial of PowerLab, a device that we'll be getting into later. Alright, so now we have two participants. They're going head to head, and they're going to see who's smarter and who's going to be the subject or not. And our first question of the game show is, what is the PowerLab? Right here, this box.
Beep! It's a recording device used to convert electrical signals into output for data to produce a graph on a screen. More specifically, we're using it this time to measure physiological functions.
Perfect. Alright, at this point of the game, whoever loses this question will be the lucky test dummy. Alright, name one example of what we would measure with the PowerLab.
I know this one! To measure your arm muscles, these thingies right here!
You mean your biceps and triceps?
Yeah, those!
You're right. Albert,
Oh man!
you're going to be the test
Okay,
dummy.
so
So our first experiment is the EMG. That one measures the electrical activity of skeletal muscle.
Okay. First in the lab, you want to set up both of these, the little teddy bear stickers, on both his bicep and his tricep. And then you want to set up a clamp on his wrist with the yucky gel that he hates for the ground. Then you want to plug in your bioamp cord into the PowerLab on the label answered bioamp, and it will show up as channel 3 and 4 on the lab. Then using the bioamp cord, you're going to hook up the different leads, and you're going to hook him up. First, for ground, which is green in this case, we hook it up to his wrist. Then it doesn't matter for the biceps and triceps which ones you set up. It's just the lower one for each has to either be positive or negative. So in this case, I'm going to put the negative on the bottom for each one. And channel 2 is going to be triceps. And channel 1 is going to be biceps. And then you repeat the same process with the positive ones on the top. That's actually this one. And then once all is set up, you're going to search the computer for Lab 7 and pull up the Lab 7 biceps, triceps, or 7.2 experiment. Once you get that, you want to just start running it, and you start getting your results.
He's still in the resting position. Let's take a look again at the computer. It's flatline.
Okay.
Alright, so now Melissa's going to go over how we can label the different peaks.
Okay, well, it's labeling the time along the bottom as we go. Right now we're going to start, and I'm just going to type in start, and it'll show up in the comment box, and we're just going to click enter, and that shows when we start. So now, we're going to have him flex his bicep. As he does it, I press bicep, and it'll show up, so that you can see the peak with the bicep. Now we're going to do the tricep. And then you can see his peak with his tricep. Now I'm going to stop it so I can auto scale, because this is out of screen. The auto scale button is over here to the side right above the measurement unit. And you can just press the auto scale, and you can go for all of them. If you don't want to auto scale, you can change the measurements over here for like 50, and it'll show up with the units. So this is how you're going to do the EMG for the biceps and triceps. Now we can go on to the next part and get Albert out of this really gross glue.
Okay, so the next question on the game show is, what is another physiological activity that the PowerLab can measure?
I know this one!
Whoa!
You can use PowerLab to measure an electrocardiogram of the heart to measure heart rate and finger pulse at the same time.
There we go, that's right.
Wait,
Haha!
not fair, I didn't know you asked a question.
Alright, so in preparation for this experiment now, both her wrists and both her ankles are going to be thoroughly alcohol swabbed first in order to clean off all the grime and dirt. And then after you do that, you have to put a good amount of the electrode cream, as you can see, in order for good contact with the electrodes in order to get the best reading possible. Alright, so also for this experiment, it's going to be an example of how you can hook up a circuit in order to power or into PowerLab also. Because what we're going to be using is we're going to be using resistors including into the ECG and see how that changes the ECG reading for several different leads. Alright, so for this experiment, as you can see, crazy setup. But once again, we're going to use the bioamp cable, this thing, and we're going to plug it in once again to the bioamp slot. And then for this experiment, we're only going to use one channel. So as you can see here, we're only going to be using channel 2. And then also the ground. So in this specific case, you're going to do a couple cases throughout the lab, but in this specific one, we have, as you can see, this negative lead is going to be attached to 2 separate resistors, which in turn are attached to her left wrist and her left ankle, as you can see. Then the positive lead is also going to be attached to another resistor, which we're going to be using alligator clips in order to connect the resistors to everything. And then we're going to connect that to her right wrist. And then the ground has no resistors attached to it, it just goes down to her right ankle. In this case, we're going to have resistor values of 1 kilo ohm for each of them. In the lab manual, you'll be able to see that you could either have 1 kilo ohm or 100 ohm. Either way, it doesn't matter. The one thing is you have to make sure that all of them are the same value. And in order to measure or to make sure that all the resistors are the same value, we use a DMM to record the exact value of each resistor. Okay, also for this case, you're going to see we're going to have a finger pulse also. So we're going to connect it to channel 1, as you can see on the PowerLab box. And then we're going to connect it to her finger as tight as you can. It doesn't necessarily matter which finger you use, except it can't be the thumb. But other than that, all the other ones have the same pulse. Okay, so now let's see what our results were for this. So as you can see in the top part, this is going to be the channel 1 results. So this is going to be her finger pulse, as you can see. And then on the bottom is a graph of the ECG recording, so her heart rate. So as you can see, we're going to have all the different waves of a heart rate. So you can see the P, Q, R, S, and T waves that are specific to each. Okay, also for this lab, we're going to need to record values of each of the different voltages for each wave. So one way you could do that is if you just get your cursor here that you move around with your mouse, and as you move it along the wave, you can see a little X moving along with it. Now say for example, I'm going to place that marker right at the tip of the wave so I can measure the voltage. Now, if you look up here on the top right, it's going to give you the voltage and the time that it's at. And then also if you want to compare to see what the different voltages are, say for example, I want to compare from here to the bottom. If you click, you place a marker right at the tip, and then you move your cursor down to the bottom, and it'll read out the difference between the voltage. Alright, so one unique feature of PowerLab is, as you're running this, it's going to continually be sliding across the screen. But once you pause it, you can actually go back and see all the data that you've collected so far by scrolling back. And here is going to be an example of, so you see all this? This is what you don't want. This is all extra noise and stuff that happens when your circuit is not connected properly. So, you know, if you see something crazy like that, that's exactly what happened. Okay, so once you finish actually gathering your data, you're going to have to save it in order to run your results and your analysis of it. So, one thing that you can do is just File, go to Save As, and if you save this directly from PowerLab, you're going to save this as a PowerLab file, and you're going to have all your data set up. But sometimes you don't necessarily need that for analysis. Sometimes one thing that you could do that is just simple is that you can just print screen, you know, on the keyboard. Finally finishing up now from this crazy mess that we have here. Remember, study hard for your quiz, kids, and BME lab should always be a fun experience.
Alright, so today's winner of today's game show host is Albert!
That's me! Yeah! Woo! Woo! Yeah!
That's today, that's it!
It beats for you, so listen close. Hear my thoughts in every note. Make me your radio and turn me up when you feel low.
Turn it
This
up a little bit.
melody was meant for you. So
Right
sing
there.
along.